All right. So, Chapter 11 of Pastor's Courage. Chapter 10, as I recall, ended on the POWs at this sugar factory being very ready to at least brutalize, if not kill, Coward, because, well, we weren't entirely sure why, but, I mean, I speculated as to what it was, and yes, it is confirmed. So, the Sergeant Major beforehand, they really didn't like, because he was effectively a collaborator with the Germans who did his best to get the most out of the POWs, and in exchange he got treated like a king by the Germans. So they said that when he was carted away to the hospital you couldn't have recognized him, and before Coward came they were told that the new Sergeant Major, that's not a good accent. He's very much like the old one, and is also friendly with the Germans. So it was completely a setup to try to get him killed. But it wasn't just they're telling them about Coward. No, lying about Coward. It was also how the previous guy was behaving. But Coward is like, no, that's not true. It does also point something else out that is interesting. But he does manage to talk them down at least enough for them to give him time to prove himself. And he does even point out that, yeah, there's no love lost between me and the Germans. They told you that so you'd kill me, essentially. It's like, well, he doesn't go that far, but he lets him figure that out, that, yeah, that explains why it was put here. But he does also mention something else. It is interesting about POW camp. Well, life as a POW, I should say. And part of what is interesting is The Great Escape, Stalag 17, and Hogan's Heroes, which I've talked about plenty of times before. I don't believe any of them actually depict this. Which is that basically it starts off talking about how, yeah, once you're a POW, you really don't care about rank. In part because what's going to happen if you're insubordinate? It doesn't matter if there's a colonel there. If you don't like the guy, you'll just ignore him. You'll be insubordinate because he can't really punish you for anything. But it does also say that, the natural leader, so if they were a lieutenant, or even a corporal, potentially, who is just a natural leader, they'd follow them. So rank wouldn't matter, just that quality of the person would. So it's not a complete breakdown of command, but it is... And also, Bridge on the River Kwai. Which Bridge on the River Kwai, because that is actually supposed to be largely British, and they definitely do depict in that a respect towards the officers. That this is basically saying, yeah, that's not necessarily going to be the case. So that is interesting. It is reasonable, though. It does make sense, because it's basically, once you're in a situation where chain of command ceases to matter, people will cease to, or at least chain of command cannot be enforced, it would then cease to matter. But hierarchy is still important, and so you will see it still form. It just doesn't necessarily form along lines of rank. Which reminds me of something that I'd seen. I'm trying to remember where it was. It was basically just talking about how the difference in how organizations naturally form between men and women, and how with women you tend to see basically cliques form. Sorry, but where they try to get consensus, so you'll see a group of them that are the clique where they are all in agreement, and anyone who doesn't agree is just forced out. Whereas with men, it's very horizontal for women. For men, it'll be more vertical like that. So rank would make perfect sense. That is that's more a masculine organization. But in this case, because it doesn't need to be the formal stuff with ranks, it'll still form vertically. It's just based on, that guy's a leader, I will follow him. You're not a leader, I don't care that you're a colonel, I'm listening to this guy. It does make sense. And it is, certainly for World War II, the bulk of POWs would be men, so you would be seeing more so that structure. I remember. I think it was actually something talking about the publishing industry. That as you saw more and more women get into positions of power there, you saw more so that kind of clique stuff happening. So they basically, what they liked is what they would do. Whereas you wouldn't have the vertical stuff where it would be potentially easier for ideas to move through it, because if it's contrary to the consensus, it doesn't matter. If somebody up above it likes the idea, it will happen no matter what the people below think, kind of stuff there. So anyway, because as I said, consensus doesn't matter. You can just order. But moving on, and back to the story. So yeah, he now basically understands the score, understands what's going on, and they are willing to give him some time. Now, one thing that I thought would be the case, but isn't. Maybe it'll be later, or it is just my memory is completely wrong. He does not end up getting punished by the Germans for his not being like the other guy. But he does do various things that definitely win over the POWs. Initially, it's things like sabotage, which they do sabotage some machinery at the plant, the sugar factory plant, but he doesn't allow them to do too much. And this makes perfect sense, because that would potentially draw attention to them and be like, oh, this is sabotage, not just things breaking down. But they do some other things that are sabotage, but not on the plant, and not with the machines, because they discovered something very interesting about sugar. Excuse me. That always happens when I get a drink of water before recording. Never happens when I'm not recording. Well, it's probably just because of all the talking. Anyhow, they found that they could start a fire inside of a box, put it in with all the sugar, and it will continue not to burn but smolder for hours, and then will ignite and take the whole thing with it. So they were just putting those into the sugar orders, especially since instead of having them put into packets for transportation, they just had specially made train cars and trucks that you'd pour all the sugar into. So they throw that in, then the whole thing would end up going, but it would be hours later. So it just seemed to be spontaneous combustion, because yes, that can happen. Okay, of people, not so much, but I don't actually know how. Well, no, sugar would burn because it is a carbohydrate, so it is possible for it to burn. But I do know that with corn silos, and I'm not sure about wheat, but I'm fairly certain corn can do this, because a dust will form from the corn bashing against each other, and the dust that comes off can combust. Well, the thing is that in a silo, if it is all kicked up, now it's mixing with the air, it's mixing with the oxygen. So then all it takes is a single spark that could come from anything, and it will just flash all of it, and that will be an explosion. It will be spontaneous combustion. You don't necessarily know what caused the spark, but it does happen. And poof. So that is why silos today are typically designed in some way to mitigate that, or certain other things are done to mitigate it. It's also why I'm trying to think of any really good examples, but none are specifically coming to mind. You will see, if there were a fire, well, in some cases with fires, you will see firefighters spraying water in areas that there's no fire. It's actually to keep dust down, because a dust explosion is a real thing and is very terrifying. So you would do that you would be spending water over here when the fire is there, because you don't want the dust to get kicked up and then that explode because of the fire. It would be very, very bad. Anyway, just coming back to this, because of that, the POWs are liking him. They're still not 100% on him, but they are liking him. And he hates the German Unterofficer, who has been really a pain in everybody's side. The POWs and his. And one of the things that he would do, that the Unterofficer would do, Kussel is his name, or at least the name used, maybe it's not his real name, but he would just come in and take their coffee, which is one of the, in some ways it makes a little bit of sense. I mean, still, he's an asshole, he shouldn't be doing this, because he's stealing from the prisoners. But the POWs get their coffee from the Red Cross, so it's actual coffee. Whereas the Germans, at this point, or just in general, they don't have access to very good coffee because of the war. So if they want good coffee, they'd have to get it from the prisoners, either through trade or just stealing it. That's what he does. And oh crap, I don't remember what it was now. but he did something particular that just, you know what? No, that's too far. And this guy was also nuts because it describes like he would pull out his revolver and just wave it around and actually shot a POW in the leg with it at one point. And it's like, yeah, this is definitely you don't want to piss him off. He will just kill you. So Coward decides, hey, you might hear a pop. Yeah, I want to turn off my amp here. Coward decides, that's it. We're going to teach him a lesson. And it's like, what are you going to do? And it's like, just don't worry. Tell the guy to start making up some coffee. I'm going to see if I can actually find it. Also, that'll give me the list of, okay. Oh, that's right. Basically, they tried to trade with the guy, and they gave him all of the camp money that they had earned because they just wanted a bottle of schnapps. Which, I mean, yeah, giving POWs alcohol probably not the best idea, but it still is. It could happen. He's like, yeah, just give me the money. I'll go in town and buy it for you. But then he just stole the money from them. And it's like, yeah, no, we're not. Carol's like, no, we're not doing this. And plus, there's also he even points out, you should have come to me. I could have helped you with this. It's like, well, yeah, but so he decides, all right, set up the coffee. We know he's gonna want some, and just go. All right, guy goes, and Coward then goes into the Red Cross packages because Red Cross also provides medicine for first aid purposes. I haven't tried looking this up, but he poured as many different drugs as he could find. Some 20 M&B tablets crushed. I don't know what those are. But 3 vials of morphia, meaning morphine, and the entire remaining stock of cocaine. Because yes, cocaine, I don't know if it's used all today anymore, but cocaine did have legitimate medical purposes back then. And he's like, yep, we're just going to mix it all together. And he even told them, do not, like when making the coffee, leave my mug alone. Put the coffee in everyone else's. Oh, okay. And it's also like, you sure you don't want tea? Yes, because he likes coffee. Okay. So the asshole comes in, and Coward's already poured the mixture into his mug, and then had the coffee added, and then a bunch of sugar. Because he knew that he being near the door and 2 others, when the asshole comes in, he brought his own mug. That's like a liter. And so he just takes their mugs and pours it all into his. Downs it. And he's already starting to feel the effects, but he does leave. This is probably a good thing. He leaves. This was at night, and they're like, all right, fine. Leaving it at this. Next day, in the morning, new under officer comes in that they don't recognize. It's like, what happened to Cussel? I mean, he's something wrong? It's like, he's dead. They weren't quite expecting that. They just wanted him out of commission. But yeah. That mixture, too much for him, and he was just found the next morning dead in the snow. And after this, they have the new officer, new under officer, and now when the POWs comes and tells him, okay, we trust you now. It's like, yeah, that's great, but there's going to be an inquest. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to handle that. I really wasn't expecting him to die. I mean, well, I'm applying the whole bet. They probably didn't expect him to die. But the guy's like, no, don't worry about it. They've already certified it's a natural death. There isn't going to be an inquest. What? Why would there not be an inquest? Why would they say it's a natural death? It's like, yeah, it looks like everybody hated him. He was a jerk to everyone. So it was probably just he's dead? Cool. We're done with him, moving on. So he got kind of lucky there. But it's like, cool. So now it's all right, with him out of the way, and now there's trust. Let's figure out how we can escape. It's like, and he's like, okay, good, because it's going to take me a little bit to come with a plan. Well, we already have a plan. You do? Why didn't you tell me? We didn't know we could trust you? That's right. Have any of you ever tried escaping before? No? I can give you some tips. And this is, in fact, the escape that was partly told in Chapter 1. Where, because they're like, yeah, for weeks, months, we've been chipping away so we can remove a concrete tile from the top of the latrine, and then can get out that way, snip through the wires, and go. And he was like, how have you been doing that without me noticing? Dude, half of us are commandos. It's kind of our thing. But then it's also okay, well, you need these other supplies. Here they are. I almost imagine being like Hogan's Heroes, where it's like, here's all of our civilian clothes, the modified battle dress, all that. So it's like, awesome. All right, well, it's going to take me a few weeks more to finish making up maps, making copies of the maps I brought, and also making copies of the passes. But when the day finally comes, like, everything is ready, it even describes that they were lucky because a mist had settled. So that's like going to make spotting them even harder. And also he had timed out the guard passing, all that. He's got it figured out. So we basically get what happens in chapter 1. And then we cutting back to here. The men have escaped. Oh, I should mention one other thing that is actually kind of curious. So it makes reference to the Startbow escape. Startbow? I'm not actually sure how I pronounce it. I didn't actually put the full name there. It was weird, though. Trying to look it up. Oh, it's still there. Yeah, Startbow. STADT-BAU. That this had already happened. But there's no more mention of that, and this I found curious. So that is a reference to the escape of the Great Escape. So that has already happened, which means the Germans are... There's more tension over escapes because of this. But what else is interesting is that while it mentions that, it makes no mention about the 50 that were executed after that. Which is curious, because you would think that would make the POW, that you would have a line in there about the POWs still being like, are we sure? Yeah, it's like, this is a much greater chance of, if they catch us, they will just kill us. I mean, as very serious as that was, it still is. Hitler was crazy enough to order that once. He's crazy enough to order it again. Regardless of the fact that it really, really was serious, what he did. By that order, and everyone else who then followed it. So, yeah, no mention of that stuff, but just that, yes, the escape had happened. And, by the way, it was weird, because I tried looking up, at least by that name, Startbow, which is how it's written in the book. I couldn't, it wasn't giving me anything. Not relevant to that. It was talking about, apparently we did bring German POWs into the United States to hold them at a camp in Arizona, I think it said. And it was talking about the Great Papau escape that apparently wasn't so great, where a bunch did escape, but I assume we recaptured them. I didn't look too closely at it. So then I guess, yes, it is true what I talked about in the movie Captain Newman, MD. That's also set in World War II. But in that, it had Italians being brought to a base in, it would have been Arizona or Nevada, a desert area, because they were captured in North Africa, and at least according to that, and it does make some sense. You keep the POWs in the same climate you had, if possible, climate that you captured them in. And that makes perfect sense, because in theory that means that they are comfortable, they will survive in that same climate. So if you maintain that, then it's like, okay, you don't need to worry about taking somebody who is used to a warmer climate and throwing them in the Arctic. Because if you did that, then that could, I see that being considered inhumane. Because you don't know necessarily that they will survive there, just because they could freeze to death. Or the reverse. Somebody who is used to it being very cold and you put them in a very warm environment may kill them again. So, may also be able to kill them. So, yeah. Anyway. But, yes, so we did have POWs held in the continental U.S. Seems a little weird, but mainly not so much the whole holding them in the continental U.S. That's not so weird to me. It's more so we brought them over the ocean for this? That seems a bit much. But I guess where else? Because it's like you would have had to have had it behind lines that are moving in Britain, which I can understand the British really not wanting that. Or in Russia. Yeah, Russia wouldn't be a good idea. Because, so you wouldn't expect them to be treated well. You'd also have to get them across the lines. Yeah, so I guess it would be, if you can't hold them, if there isn't a POW camp you can hold them at that's like, okay, this is far enough from the front lines, it'll be secure. then yeah, you'd have to bring them to the continental U.S. So anyway, he decides, looking out, the plan was he would wait a week after this escape before he would try himself. Then he's like, wait a minute, because he'd already like gone into bed thinking, yeah, next it'll be my turn to escape. And then it's like, wait, why don't I just go now? So he does. He gets dressed, gets all his stuff together, goes out the window, is like, oh, thank you that they put the concrete slab back. And then jump down. It's on the ground. And fortunately, he is frozen there because at that time is when the guard goes by, spots the hole in the fence, and starts like blowing the whistle and yelling out "Rouse, Rouse" to get people. And Cowd's like, all right, he's committed. He gets up, runs for the hole because it's only the one guard that knows at the time, and he's alerting other people. He runs through the hole. His clothing does get torn, but he just pushes through. Then he keeps running through the forest. At one point, he stops, but then he starts hearing barking. So it's like, crap. Gets going again, and he is constantly being buffeted by the branches he's running into because he can't see any of them, getting all scraped and cut up. But he keeps going, finally reaches a railway line. He's like, okay, this is good. And looking, there's a train. It's like stopped at just like a signal or something. So he just runs to the middle of it, finds a car that he can leap into, does so. No idea what he's in, no idea where he's going. He just takes his coat, wraps it around him a bit tight as a blanket, and he's out. So, yeah. And that's where the chapter ends. So, still kind of a point of tension. But, yeah, in theory, he has just initiated a successful escape, but, as I said before, we know he never successfully escapes. So, we'll just have to see in the next chapter how far he gets and things like that. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else to mention about this one. Not really. I mean, it was interesting, and because I'm just thinking again about, and I've talked about it previously, how one thing awkward with going through this, because it's nonfiction, is I can't really criticize the storytelling. I mean, I can. Like, the flow of the story. I can't criticize that. But it's like, what is described, I can't really criticize so much like I can when reading a story, because, like, well, no, these are actual events. True, they have been retold to be a narrative. But also, to be honest, I had no issue with how it's being told. I really don't. The style to it, I'm generally happy with. I think I've had some complaints, but I already can't remember them. Maybe if I look back in my notes, I can find them. But I'm happy with that. Any like selecting, I don't feel like there's anything significant that's being left out, except for what I already mentioned earlier about the whole why you're not, like, there's no reaction to the 50 men that were executed. Excuse me. You know, the funny thing is, I think the mic does pick it up. It looks like it does, and I'm sorry, but it's just the water is doing that to me. The water and all the talking, at least. Which I guess one possibility. One possibility is it could be they knew about the escape, but they didn't know about the executions. That is possible. That as a POW, he didn't know. Because it would depend. Because the camp, I can believe that what happens at the end of the Great Escape is accurate. Because, only so many were returned, and then it's like, okay, well, what of the 50 that were injured? How many casualties were there? And the commandant doesn't really want to answer. How many casualties were there? None. And so it's I think he actually was a squadron commander. But now I'm suddenly curious about that. I'm gonna have to look that up another time. Anyway, because he goes around with a cane, and hang on, because it was Bader, right? Yeah, Wing Commander Bader. No, it was Squadron Commander. I'm gonna pause for just a moment. Okay, so this is what I just had to check, because the senior officer depicted in The Great Escape for the POWs is often shown walking around with a cane. Wing Commander Bader, Douglas Bader, who was British, just like that character, just like the character there, lost, he was a double amputee. He lost both his legs. So he would potentially be going on with the king. It's like, wait a minute, was he there? Because we got that mention of him here. So I just checked, because I'd already checked on, as I mentioned before, I couldn't, just looking up Stockbow, it was giving me wrong information, but I threw it into Duck AI, because, like, what the hell, why not? Because at least maybe phrasing the question there, it would digest it better than just like a Google search would. But I just asked it, yes, Bader was in fact at that camp, though not at that time. However, I could still see, it mentions he was moved to the escape-proof facility at Colditz Castle, which I'd have to check. Because there was one place, and it was like at a castle, where they were going to try to, POWs actually had fashioned like a glider to try to escape by that. Maybe that was it, but anyway. But I could believe, because a lot of those characters were amalgamations in the movie, and also the Americans had been removed. In the movie, it seems like the Americans were part of the escape, and they weren't. They had already been transferred out before the escape happened. So I could believe that that character was meant to be like him. Like the real Wing Commander Bader. Anyway. Sorry, I saw a potential link there, and it's like, okay, I gotta check on this. So as I was saying, I can believe that they were aware of the escape, because that would have spread. That knowledge would have spread. But I can believe that the Nazi higher-ups would have tried to control the information as far as the executions. The camp itself would have known, because why did they not return? And the whole no casualties, basically saying they were killed. Not that they were shot at trying to escape, that they were killed. Okay? So that camp would know. Would it necessarily have spread? I think the only way that would have happened, if the Germans decided, no, we don't want this to spread, because we know that will cause problems, is if it were, and it is also possible that they let it spread. I'm going with the assumption, hypothetical as it might be, that they did not want it to spread. They would have been able to write letters about it. They would have somehow, at Stockbow, been able to let the Red Cross know. And from there, it would have spread. Because that would have gone back to Britain. And then there would have been a response that likely would have been talked about on the BBC. And so that would be a way that other prison camps could have learned if they were receiving signals from the BBC, which some fashioned means of doing that. Lambsdorff actually does have a makeshift radio that the POWs built for that purpose. So that's possible. But that could still have been delayed. But it is also that maybe they just didn't, the author decided, nope, not relevant for what's going on here. We don't need to distract with that, especially, I'm just thinking about the timeline. The book likely would have been prior to the movie The Great Escape. But there would have been other stories written about that escape attempt and the massacre. In fact, such that when this book was written, just saying Stockbow, just mentioning that may have been enough. Everyone would know what's being talked about there. You don't need to go any further. Whereas today, I love that movie. I couldn't have told you what the name of the camp was. And it's also, here, even if I go back to this. Yeah. Well, okay. The reference to an escape from Stalag Bau, also known as Stalag Luft 3. I think Luft 3 is more so what I would have recognized its name as from the movie. But it's also interesting. It's Stalag Bau, whereas in this it is Stadt. S-T-A-D-T, which that does seem like it could be similar to Stalag. Stalag, I could see that, but I don't know. So yeah, it's a little odd. But anyway, that is the only criticism I can really think of for the telling here. So really, more so with this, it's learning the certain details that you put into a fiction story, and it will help you make it seem real. Like the whole thing I was talking about with the rank would cease to matter so much. It would just be who the natural leaders are. That is something that I could see some forgetting, especially if you just go by something like The Great Escape and Bridge on River Kwai. In both of those, the POW's rank does have meaning, and is very much depicted as that. Stalag 17, not as much. Yeah, because there are leaders there, but the rank doesn't seem to matter. It just seems to be whoever's whoever. Hogun's heroes rank does matter, but it's really just for Hogun. But he is the natural leader there. Everyone else is like just corporal, sergeant, private. That's it, and they all are treated as equal. But it's also more so they have their specialties. So yeah, if you need something done mechanically or electronically, you go to Kinchlow. It doesn't matter that he might be a higher rank than LeBeau. That's not what LeBeau's good at. LeBeau's great at cooking, and he's a tailor as well. So you'd go there. The rank wouldn't matter. It's just what you're good. It's just your specialty. So, and it does seem like that is more accurate then, but it is also that is a legitimate military operation that they're running there. So it is Colonel Hogun, and you do treat him as the colonel. It's just once you get below that, it's always, and it's also like oh, why can't I think of his name? Colonel Crittenden. But what was the actor's name? When he appears in that, technically, he's a British colonel, and so would seem to be equal in rank to Hogun, but it is explained in the first episode with him, because he is thoroughly incompetent, and he doesn't know what's going on at the Stalags, so yeah, I mean, they are very funny. Colonel Crittenden, so funny. Bernard Fox, that's the actor saying. He does that role so well. Oh man, Bernard Fox was funny. Anyway, but in that it is actually stated that because he had attained colonel sooner, like he's been a colonel longer, he is actually senior to Hogun, which causes various problems because he then takes command, and Hogun's like, you don't know what's going on here. And it doesn't matter. He doesn't want to hear any of it. He is certain he knows what the right thing to do is. And Hogun's like, all right, guys, we don't tell him anything. Because it is also, because technically what they're doing is espionage, Crittenden sees it as, well, that's not what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be trying to escape, not espionage. Espionage wouldn't be crickets. And he'd actually tell the Germans about it. It's like, yeah, we can't tell him anything. I can just do what we can to help him, and then once he's gone, we don't worry about him anymore. At least that's in the first episode. In subsequent episodes, when he returns, he has been briefed, and so he now does have better respect for them and isn't going to be a problem, but he is a problem because that's his character. But yeah, so in that, you do actually see that rank mattering, but as it just said that, it really doesn't. So that would be one of those things where a lot of popular media does depict that as wrong. So you might not, if you were writing a story where this would matter, you might have gotten it wrong. You might get it wrong because you think, oh, if that's what you have to go by, but remember, this is a biography, so this is supposed to be accurate. Hogun's heroes, not so much. It's supposed to be fun and entertaining. All right. I was trying to think if there's anything else along those lines to mention. Not really. Oh, no, I will add that. Because that is something. The stuff that is unwritten, because there are other perspectives, which is going to be interesting when I do this kind of stuff for certainly the Children of Many Gifts, because there's a number of times where there's information I didn't write in the book because the point of view being followed, that person never knows that information. So here, with Kussel, and how the other Germans didn't like him, he was an asshole to all of them as well. That's something that is explained after the fact. So it's like, I would just point out that is also something to keep in mind. Unless you are doing a third-person unlimited, you don't need to tell the reader everything that's going on. You can if you want. Totally up to you. But you don't need to. You can leave it to when it either becomes relevant, or, in the case of my book, you just don't. Because it's never relevant and known by the people involved, so at that time. So crap. I know I had to do that many times. But I mean, it's mainly like in the 40s where certain people are and what they're seeing. Um, but I mean, there are other instances of it as well where it's just no, I'm not telling you this information because the person either doesn't know it or it's irrelevant to them, so I'm not telling you. But until I am like actually looking at it with not talking while thinking about it, I'd be able to come up with a better list. Um, so chapter 12 is next, and that is going to have him dealing with how he tries to escape. Well, with this escape attempt. So yeah, see you then.